I lost track of it. Oh, there it is. I have good eyes and it's still hard to see. So maybe my eyes aren't as good as I thought. I don't know what's happening today. Something.
Without it, I can barely see the hands on the clock.
What?
Yeah. I go by. Is this off?
Uh-huh. Call the Planning Commission meeting to order. Madison, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Krushat,
Here.
Commissioner Pahana,
Here.
Commissioner Walker,
Here.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Here.
Chair Cure,
Here.
all present.
Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand on the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going on the city website and clicking on the meeting agendas link. Public comments. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the chair of the commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation to 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out name and address slips and give them to the Planning Commission secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act, from state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. I'm going to open public comment. Are there any public comments? No, we're going to close public comment. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. Leslie?
Good evening, everyone. I have not attended any meetings since our last.
Max?
I haven't really attended any meetings, but I did go to the International Festival this weekend. That was a pretty good time. It was enjoyable. It was well attended, which I like seeing, so that's it.
I have not attended any meetings since our last either. Alex?
I have not attended any meetings since our last.
This last Saturday was the Morongo Basin Healthcare District had their health fair in Yucca Valley. I didn't attend it. I was drafted to load and unload trucks to help support it. My wife, who did support it, says it was very well attended by about 350 people. And that same health fair will be at 29 Palms in October.
Thank you. Consent calendar for the Planning Commission resolution for 525 or 25-05 ancillary activities. I don't have to do all of them? Okay. Both consent calendars.
I motion that we accept the two items as written.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Aye.
Chair Cure,
Aye.
approved.
All right, we don't have any public hearings tonight. Do we have any discussion and potential action items? Any community development director updates?
Nothing special, but the Reset Hotel is really trying to get their last inspections in, so they're furiously working on getting that done. So just gonna say that.
Great. All right, so now we're going to move into the study session. We'll discuss and then we will have a public comment on this one. All right.
Mike starts. So I got a very, very brief discussion or presentation for discussion purposes. Electronic vehicle charging stations, we have had several different entities ask us about our process for vehicle charging stations. Our development code is silent on it, and we wrote the staff report in accordance with that intention, that we don't have vehicle charging stations listed in the development code. With a review from our city attorney, this issue has been brought before the city council some 7-8 years ago in the building code. So we do have state laws pertaining to electronic vehicle charging stations in the building code. So our recommendation as part of this is whatever we need to do in the development code to be perfectly clear what the expectations are. Because without that reference in the development code, we could say, is an electronic vehicle station a gas station? Is it something else? Is it a transportation hub? Basically, it is something else. It's its own unique entity. State law in 2015 prescribes the development of electronic vehicle charging stations in any zoning district subject to the issuance of a building permit. So now, no land use approval whatsoever. This is from our understanding from the city attorney and from the county attorney general. And like I said, our municipal code reflects this, but our development code does not. So there are a few things that we're still trying to hash out as from a legal perspective and a land use perspective. One is, from our understanding of the opinion of the attorney general, there really isn't a limitation as to how many electronic vehicle stations can be approved at once on one particular facility. With the exception of if you have under 10, then it's reviewed in under 20 days, and there's some time frames in there like that. It is also not clear at this time, and I want to get the Planning Commission's at least preference at this time, as to what other commercial activities you might typically see an electronic vehicle charging station that we would want to have some land use approval. And, for instance, a convenience store, perhaps with alcohol sales, a restaurant, or some other commercial activity. So that's where we are as far as electronic vehicle charging stations. I have on the screen a couple of things that the city has put together. This is chapter 18.09, and this is our building permit section of our municipal code. It is a very, very short section, and it basically reflects, I think, state law as it was adopted at the time. And it references only building and safety requirements, no land use approvals of any kind. And this is, we do have an electronic vehicle checklist that is what was required for us to put together. So we do have this, and this is available on our website, and this is available for any applicant to fill out to process their charging station. Also, I thought I put this on here, but I guess I didn't. And I can give me a couple minutes and I'll do it. We also have passed out the memo from the State Attorney General's office, I believe. Yeah, it's in there. This should be the last item in here, explaining the state's direction to local jurisdictions. And again, it discusses all about the reasons for the law and timeframes involved, and et cetera, as far as a building permit goes. Again, no land use discussion. So I'm going to open it up for the Planning Commission for your input and feedback, and what the commission is concerned about for these particular things, and what we should and should not include in the development code. So that is our presentation.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start on this side with Jim.
I did a little research before this meeting, and because I don't have an EV vehicle. So, but a level 1 EV charger, which is the most basic type, runs on 110 volts. So, and what it states, and I'm assuming this is, it's compatible with most, and you just plug it up to a household, outlet, but it takes all night to recharge your vehicle. I noticed that we have a requirement for level 1 permitting. Is that what we do? Everybody that buys an electric car? Because most of the time they get issued this when they purchase the vehicle. They go home, they tap into a 110 current at their garage, but they don't necessarily have to permit themselves, right?
Right.
So I kind of think that that's what we should do, probably look at level 2 and above. Yes? Do we need to permit level 1?
So let me bring up the state attorney general's memo,
Okay,
and I'll put it on the screen.
okay.
And we're not just talking about home charging stations, this is in a commercial nature.
Right, I understand. So if somebody wants to say, okay, this 110 outlet is for charging your car all night?
Well, and fast chargers are not, and I do have it here. So this is the letter, this is the memo from the state attorneys general from earlier this year, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, charging stations are key.
Yep. So, but again, as far as the land use approval,
Yeah,
is all electronic vehicle charging stations, from what we can tell, have no discretionary approval whatsoever. It's all ministerial.
okay. So I don't see a need for us to require somebody that's issued a level 1 charging for their home, and if it's for their home.
Well, this is bigger than that. Yeah, for the home.
I understand
this
that,
is
I understand. And then there's the level 2s and level 3s that we need to. And, yeah, okay. I just don't want to make it difficult for somebody who has an EV vehicle, buys it, gets their charger, they come home, and they sit there and they plug it in, and they're saying, oh, I've got to be permitted. Yeah,
And in future homes, those
Yeah.
kind of things are gonna be required.
all right.
All right, we'll move on to Alex.
So the commercial and residential areas, where exactly would, like, what spaces do we actually have for?
It would be every zone.
So we have everything completely, it supersedes everything, huh?
Supersedes local zoning.
So what, I guess, I don't know a lot about,
We're learning all this.
yeah, so,
And we got
what-
this information just before this meeting started.
Yeah.
so,
And this is a workshop, this is not a decision. So
what
this
ex,
is for us to study this and then come back and.
so with one permit, they can, it doesn't, if I heard correctly, or I read that correctly, it doesn't have a limitation on how many right now?
That's our understanding.
And what does an abundance of these charging stations do to a power grid in a place that already has a pretty
Edison would have to.
interesting power grid?
Yeah, Edison would have to make adjustments.
What does that look like for, I know you obviously don't have the answers to this, but what would that look like for the residents, like the people here, for having to make those adjustments? I guess, and like, how long would that actually take if they're in like residential areas and different things like that? So those are the questions in my head.
Sure.
As for commercial areas, they're already, I feel like a lot of them are already designated for high power flow and different things, or at least more accessible to those. Because we have one at the National Park, or the Visitor Center, correct? The charging station there.
Right, so there's only 2 charging stations in town. One is at the casino, and that's not even a charging station. And same thing with the visitor center. They're not really charging stations. They're just spots. They're just parking spots.
Right.
And any new parking spot over a certain amount of space is needs to have in there at least, there's a percentage of, and there's a formula in there to how many spots have to be electronic vehicle ready. But this is standalone parking lots for this kind of thing.
Kind of like the Rivian one that's in Joshua Tree.
Very much like the Rivian one.
Okay, that's the questions I have just for right now. I'm
Yeah,
still
and
kind of
and-
reading this information.
Yeah, and with this recent information, I still wanted to have this discussion with the planning commission and get your concerns and questions, and then come back at another time and see if I can get those answered for you before we make any recommendations on development code updates.
Great.
Appreciate you.
Max?
So, I know when the base was looking at having an all EV fleet of government vehicles, in order to charge the base's vehicles, we were gonna need about an extra 10 megawatts of power, which is quite a bit. So, I would really like to be able to, when people are wanting to come build a charging station somewhere, that we're doing the engineering studies, at least to make sure the power is not gonna be, they plug all these things in and then everybody down the road they're losing their power. So, that's a concern.
Yes. Yeah, the city of 29 does not have its own utility company. We rely on Edison.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you.
So, we can certainly reach out to Edison to see how, at least what they're publicly willing to say about their preparation for these kinds of permits that may be coming in the future.
And I do kind of agree with Jim that I think the permitting should be a little bit different for residential to commercial.
I'm not sure what authority we have.
Yeah.
Just being perfectly honest.
Yep.
at the
That's
moment. And then it comes into some of the ancillary uses that you might typically see. For the close analogy is, of course, a gas station.
Right.
There are commercial activities at gas stations. Very rarely do you just see
Just a gas station.
just a fueling pump. And want to get a feel for the planning commission as to if there's any particular concerns about some of these
Well, I mean,
ancillary commercial stuff.
we do have a lot of open available ground, and I'd really hate to see people come in and say, I'm gonna build an EV truck stop charging station. And, that would,
But they would have a right to.
Yeah.
yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, and this is not meant to be a pro or anti.
Right,
I'm
no.
just sharing information.
We need the EV charging, I agree, but it could
So-
grow and it'd be something we don't necessarily want.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Leslie?
Okay, so given the Attorney General's 5 significant common compliance issues, obviously it's applying the local zoning regulations to EVs applications. So local zoning is out, like you said, there's nothing we could do about the zoning. And your question that you posed in the agenda was just that, in the staff report, is that you just wanted to know what our preference was, even though this kind of doesn't really matter.
I mean, it's preempting the zoning, but it's not mentioned in our development code.
Right, so I would prefer to see it more like a service, like a gas station, that's what these main giant park and plug or whatever.
Yeah.
But requiring discretionary review through conditional use permits or other processes is something that we can't really do if it's competing with the streamlining laws.
Right.
And the only thing that we really could do is if we find anything that has a health and safety requirement. And through that, you'd even have to have written findings that with substantial evidence. And then you have to also address feasible mitigation. So if we didn't have any of those alternatives, and then they could still appeal to the planning commission. So if we'd have to find a specific adverse effect that's quantifiable and direct for whatever community they were going to.
Which
Page
are you?
3
Page
is
3?
the specific adverse impact of the Attorney General's
Mhm.
findings.
So this is page 3.
Yeah, so,
It starts on page 2.
Okay.
yeah,
2A. Okay.
2A and then, So the permit denial must include like that explanation of why we couldn't have any other feasible alternatives. Kind of like what you guys were mentioning about the grid lines or, the power supply being able to support that location. But if we couldn't find a different location, that's the only reason, and then it's appealable to the locality's planning commission. But it sounds like
So-
based
so-
off a building permit, if that didn't go through for some reason, it would be appealable to us.
Right.
So the only question I really saw was in the staff report is where would I like to see it? Is there any other advice you're looking for
Well,
today?
that's
or-
one part of the advice, and the other part is, and one thing we're getting clarification through our legal team is the ancillary commercial stuff. The commercial stuff you not typically see.
Wouldn't be zoned for that area, so that would not be included in the permit.
Yes, would
Okay.
we still be allowed to do that or not?
Well,
And-
if they were choosing those locations such as like residential, we would not put a convenience store there.
Without a zone change or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
seems,
Is that the preference of the planning commission then?
well, it seems like that is the rule.
Right, I wouldn't wanna see somebody buy a plot of RL5 and say, I'm putting in this truck charging stop and I'm gonna build a AM/PM style store and
Well, that,
whatever else.
yeah, that wouldn't be allowed unless they applied and we somehow had a finding to not allow that zone change.
Right,
Right.
but they say, but my main purpose of building this is the charging station. I can build that wherever.
With a building permit.
But I wanna come and build this other stuff that's coming along with it that I want to support my charging stuff. How do we then say no to that?
Because it's not zoned for that?
Yes, also.
Unless they applied for a zoning change and we'd have to agree upon
We'd
that.
have to process that
That's
accordingly.
where,
Right.
But they then say we're denying them the ability to put in their charging station where they bought this plot of land.
yeah, there's definitely some specific language that needs to be there in terms of that, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also just one of the other thoughts that everyone kind of pointed on was on the grid, like
Sustainability.
yeah, on the grid, what it's going to be for the neighbors or whatever. And something that I've seen a lot is just everything that's already happened with the SE upgrades, shutting down businesses during prime hours, during, spring break, and all these kinds of things have really affect the local business. And so I think like where can we go with really developing the relationship ahead of time with SEE of how we go about that? Because I think that's what's negatively impacted, like if it's in a residential zone, will it be the same way where you're getting your power turned off every day or night, right? For how long and all of that? Is that something that could be worked out a little bit more in advance?
Would
I don't know how it was worked out. I know some points that we changed it where it was going to get shut off in downtown, and then we switched it, and then we didn't have a planning commission meeting because then it was the night of the meeting. So I know we've worked with moving things around slightly, but that's obviously a concern for everyone. I don't know.
Yeah, this feels a little strong army.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Would that be, to your point, like, how do you comply or be compliant or enforce compliance with electricity shutdowns?
Yeah.
Would you have to put in the code that if there were so many violations of tripped power outages in this particular area caused by your charging station, that could be an only way to keep it in compliance or to have it upgraded to keep up with the grid to prevent the concerns that she's talking about?
I feel like those things fall under health and safety,
I agree.
like as something that can be like deniable, where it's like there's, or we kind of have I would argue to say we have a little bit of a fragile grid.
So how do you, if they receive a building permit, how are they going to have that finding of a potential life, health, safety of a power grid shorting out or going off often? How would that be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people need, or, if they don't have backup, it could be for medical devices, et cetera, right? Especially in a residential zone. I know sometimes just the power goes out and it is what it is. But if it's due to something that was permitted like this, then is there some way to preemptively included in the language.
Oh, the electrical load calculation included in the, okay.
that's-
So it's already in part of the checklist.
That's
Yeah.
part, yeah, that's part of the application.
So the applicant would have to prove that they could sustain this check.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Okay.
you go.
And I realize a lot of this is coming at you,
Now,
coming
yeah.
at you now. And I get that. And, yeah, and this
And
is
I
why
think-
I'm not asking for a decision at this point.
Yeah. But I also think, I mean, I think it is nice to be able to have the convenience at a charging station to have some sort of commercial uses there, right? And so I think, I don't know how it could be altered that you wouldn't be able to have, obviously, commercial use in, like you're saying, like where that could be a potential issue.
Well, if I was
if they're
gonna
applying
pour
for-
a bunch of money into a project, would I go into like this random neighborhood where only the limited to the amount of people who drive down that street would be aware of that charging station? Or that it would show up on your car that now you're having to come, it's guiding you to my over here in a residential area plug-in?
Totally.
Or would I want to invest more in an area where while they're doing that, they could go to a restaurant or they could go shopping or they
Yeah.
could, so, but as far as California is concerned, they're just like, I want them everywhere.
You can do it everywhere. And I
Well,
think the level one that you were talking about, Jim, with the 110, it's obviously you could plug your own into it. You're not charging. Like, this is applicable to if someone wanted to charge someone else to come charge their car at their house in a 110 option. It's not you charging your own vehicle at your
Is
own.
that allowed?
That's what this is saying is,
Well,
So you
It's
could,
basically like a private parking lot.
yeah.
so you could essentially, in your own home, if you had a permit, you could have people charge it because it's in a residential zone.
Well, I guess it really comes back down to Max's point. It's the forethought of it. Like if somebody decides they want to build in a residential area and they decide, sure, there's not a lot of direction, traffic going through there just yet, but forethought, like, can they appeal? Like a zone change? Like if we deny them a zone change because they want something to complement their charging station, so then it opens up a whole other thing. That's why I said this feels a little strong-army, just reading this memo.
That's
Like,
California law for you.
yeah,
But there
it
always
leaves
seems
us
to be
in
this-
such a weird predicament.
Yeah, there always
That's-
seems to be this dichotomy between what the state regulations are and what the local jurisdictions have to comply with.
Right, and it's, state law, like, more or less supersedes, right? So,
And not more or less.
yes,
It
it does.
supersedes, yeah.
So we can't, but are we gonna have to write a code regulating if an individual home is now allowing a charging station for a car? Like as a business or? I'll have to research. Okay,
And these are the questions we're wanting to get from you for us to come back.
Yeah.
Right, because
cause that'd be like a home business
if somebody,
permit?
if somebody buys two empty lots next to each other, says, I'm gonna pave these, and I'm gonna put a transformer here, and I'm gonna hook up 15 level 2 level 3 fast chargers, and I'm gonna have 20 of these 110 outlet things you come plug your car into and leave it overnight in my parking lot, and you walk the 2 blocks home.
Yeah,
That seems allowed.
It is.
Yeah.
it is on this.
Right
yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But would they get a business license because they're operating a business in a residential zone, right? You wouldn't.
Well, this says you can have a building code, but because it's
Then it's
it's
a
not
business.
personal use, it's now a business, it would be operated with a business license?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah,
But would the business license be allowed because they're operating a business?
in
Their
a
business is in the
residential.
residential zone,
That's a good question.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mhm. Thank you for
So,
articulating
having-
that
yeah.
for me.
So if
Let's-
this is being pushed, do they get like grants for opening these things? Do they get assistance, government assistance? I'm just curious.
That's
That would be like
entirely
separate.
possible, but it's beyond us.
All right, I'm gonna open public comment on this, see if anyone else has some questions or thoughts. Open public comment regarding the EV charging? Anyone? All right, do you want to fill out a card and put it up, bring it up to the front? They're right outside.
Should be outside.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Gill, 29 Palms resident and owner of Joshua Tree Astronomy Adventures. I just wanted to say that these are definitely economic engines and positive adds to our community. We don't really question how many gas stations we have, but we have none of these resources. Gas stations are bright, they're loud, they suck power, and they're very dirty. They harm our environment in measurable ways, even on a small scale. Within our locality, we have lots of these and we don't think twice about it. So the resistance to this change is understandable, but I think the bigger picture says that this is something we need to take seriously as a positive for our community. It's also true that these are commercial enterprises and unlikely to pop up in rural areas, though I do, as a rural liver, really appreciate safeguarding those communities. We know that these are commercial investments. We also know that many of these stations, the precedent has been set to not negatively impact local power supply because you can throw solar panels on them. And I'm not oversimplifying this problem. Buildings with solar power still rely on a grid. Theoretically, they can contribute to a grid, but that's more often a theory than a practice. But many EV stations find it more financially beneficial to try to find a source of their own power, which is something our community already does on a larger scale, but on a smaller commercial scale would make a lot of sense for a business like this. So if you did want to mandate that any EV company that wants to charge cars here should be responsible for seeking their own utilities through solar power, I think that that might be an interesting option to consider so that our grid isn't negatively impacted. It's also important to recognize that it's not just our power grid that is fragile. Our power grid on a national level is very fragile, and repairs for our power grid at that level are not feasible. It's a long-term problem for us nationally. So for us locally, insulating ourselves from the negative effects of this much broader problem is really important. So it takes smaller steps like this where more electric drain from something like an EV station could be mitigated by the utilization of other options to power that station. So if it is possible to consider putting into code that any EV station that wants to operate in 29 Palms should, or at least should seek to attempt to provide their own power through solar energy, it is not unrealistic. It's something commercial EV stations do. I also run a tourism-based business, and the last thing I'll say is that gas stations bring no one here, and EV chargers absolutely will. It is a change that cars are going to fundamentally change within the next decade, and we should not be behind that curve. We should be ahead of it. So we're attracting more forward-thinking people to our community that drive those type of vehicles. It will be a draw, I have a feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you also want to have a public comment still? Yeah.
Just 1 hour before, I just had a meeting with Keith regarding,
What's your name?
my name is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, Mark Jing. So we are and seek land and planning to build the, like exactly the lady explained, solar plus charging station. So the reason is this one, because this area, there are plenty of land. And the land is, land price still, and is increasing day by day. But compared with other areas, and the land can support under the solar panels. And if we can put the solar panels and plus the EV chargers, so this is the most, for the business, maybe it's not that economical, but is more stable and also more supportive and compare with from Edison. Because Edison, you just get whatever commercial EV chargers, it will take minimum 20 months. Minimum 20 months. So I have an experience just a few months back. I spent 6 months and just want to just enhance some power for solar panel manufacturers. But I took the 6 months, get just one answer. You wait another 20 months. We probably maybe and provide you the power. So that's why, and we are thinking come to this area. So put the solar power and supporting the EV charger. If we have a surplus power, we can and sell to the Edison. So this is the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? All right. Please make sure you fill out your form and bring it. Okay. Closing public comment. I had one question that popped in my head when they were speaking is, can you have like building requirements, like what has to be required at the location,
Building code, yeah.
right? And so I know we already have the building codes set.
So, as of right now, anything that, any building that would be constructed, at least in our opinion for right now, we still have to comply with setbacks and building heights and that kind of stuff.
But can you require, say, certain like landscaping or shade structure, or require an amount of solar or anything, like to get into those details where you actually require? Okay. I think that's part of the questions I would love to know is like, if you can, you can't, we want them, but we want to make sure that X, Y, and Z happen in order for it to be something that's great for the community. I don't know which items are allowed to dictate that or not. But I think things like, a shade structure with a solar on top would be a nice benefit. I mean, we keep talking about adding more cooling areas or shade for people, things like that.
Just wanted to say I am in full support of these power stations, these power charging stations. But like anything else, I just want to make sure we're looking at everything based off it, because I would hate to see, and I'm not saying there's any kind of mal or ill intentions of any kind, just I'd hate to see someone take advantage of a big corporation, take advantage of a small community. And that's just always my thought process. So yeah. So more information would be nice, but I do agree it is sustainable and it is a good thing for the community, and I know that cars are moving into that direction. I would like to support, but like anything else, more information would be nice.
Anyone else have any final comments? I agree. In supporting, I know a lot of people who come to visit or even visiting me here, including even this last week, my brother was here and he drove to Joshua Tree to charge his car and came back because he wanted the supercharger or whatever. I don't know all the details about all the different kinds of chargers, but it didn't exist here, so he left and went elsewhere to come back in order to charge. And that's not that happens quite a bit that people say that. So I know that it's something that's needed and wanted and all that.
I believe the speaker when they say this could be a draw.
Yeah, absolutely.
The solar panel information was really appreciated, so thank you.
Okay, so I think if we have no more comments or questions, then we're going to adjourn the meeting.